Great, thanks. Welcome everybody to the September meeting of the Nantucket Historical Commission. So great to see you all here. I'm just going to announce that the meeting is being recorded. So just be aware that it'll be available on the town's YouTube channel later. And we don't have any members of the public here yet. I am thinking that some folks, one person at least might pop in later, but I guess we can just go ahead and get started. I'm going to go around and announce everybody, and I have an important and exciting introduction to make as well with a new commissioner here. And if you could just confirm that you can hear me and that you're present when I call your name. Starting with the commissioners first, we have our Vice Chair, Angus McLeod. Oh, we can't hear you, Angus.
Good morning.
Good morning. We have our Secretary, David Silver.
Good morning, present.
Hi, David. We have Commissioners Tom Montgomery.
Present.
Mickey Rowland.
Here.
Clement Durkees.
Here.
Georgia Raisman.
Here.
And our newest alternate commissioner, Barbara White.
Here.
I don't know if everybody knows Barbara, but Barbara, you have everyone's name in front of you on their screen. That's a nice feature of Zoom, and I'm sure we'll all get to know each other well over time. And we're just incredibly honored and pleased that you took an interest in our commission and applied and received the spot. And we're just so happy to have you. So thank you.
Thank you.
We have our staff liaison, Holly Bacchus.
Good morning.
Good morning,
Hi, Holly.
Hi, Holly.
And we are also very pleased to welcome HDC Administrator Kadeem McCarthy.
Morning, everyone.
Hi.
Morning.
Morning.
We have a couple guests. Mary Bergman. Hi, Mary. Nantucket.
Hi.
Hi, from the Nantucket Preservation Trust, and our liaison to the Select Board, Dawn Hill-Holgate. Hi, Dawn.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us. So I don't see any members of the public here. We do have public comment on our meeting, but it looks like no one is here for public comment. So I'm going to go directly to ask if everybody had a chance to review the minutes of the July meeting and if there are any comments or discussion or change requests to the minutes. Seeing none, could I have a motion to approve minutes?
So moved.
Okay, that was Angus approving and Tom seconding. All in favor to approve the minutes? I'm an aye.
Hi.
Hi.
Aye.
Angus, are you an aye?
Aye.
And David, are you in favor of approving your minutes that you wrote?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. All right, so the minutes are accepted. We have minutes of the August meeting forthcoming. So moving on to administrative updates. So update to the select board, I have an announcement to make, which is that Jason Bridges, chair of the select board, has confirmed that we're penciled in to update the board on October 20th. We'll prepare materials which are due on October 15th. And I just want, I mean, the purpose of the update is really for the board and the community to know what we've been up to, what we've accomplished, and what we think we might continue to work on, and ask for feedback and suggestions and requests for help. But I also wanted to give everybody a chance to, you know, I'll prepare the update. So please advise me on anything you'd like to see, any recommendations. This is the time to discuss that, because our next meeting is, well, actually our next meeting is October 15th, and I'll need to get the materials in that day. So I'll probably share a draft at our meeting. So comments, suggestions? Okay, other than don't embarrass us. Okay, all right, well, I think it's pretty straightforward. But I'm excited that we will have the chance to update the board because that's been kind of a year-long goal, and we've been asking since July. So it's great that they want to hear from us. And that the community wants to hear from us. Okay, the next update is a joint meeting with the HDC. So we do have a date for this joint meeting. It is November 12th from 1 to 3 p.m. Presumably it will be on Zoom. I should have emailed this to you guys in advance, but I want to share the letter that Angus and I prepared and that Holly circulated. So at our last meeting, we discussed what should go into this letter. And then we took the comments from the August discussion and turned it into this request. So it says, I'm writing regarding the annual joint meeting of the NHC and the HDC, which is part of the Park Service Certified Local Government Program. We're still a new commission, we're only 2 years old. So the NHC and the HCC are getting to know one another. Therefore, the NHC commissioners suggest a logical topic for a joint meeting is a review of the NHC and HDC primary tasks and obligations, areas of overlap, and ways to help and support one another. The commissioners asked me to present the list of responsibilities and duties for the NHC for review by the HCC chair and vice chair, along with an invitation to convene a pre-meeting in which chairs and vice chairs of both commissions working together with you could agree an agenda for the joint meeting. I've attached the duties and responsibilities as an outline. Let us know if we can meet and also have a pre-meeting. So this is what we generated in, and this went to, this was copied and Holly circulated it. So Holly can update us on what she knows, but this is what was on the list. Preservation planning, the survey being our most important activity. Surveys of structures, places, objects, archaeology, all according to this defined framework. Recommending structures for eligibility on the National Register of Historic Places is a fundamental activity of preservation planning, but of course, because we're already a National Historic Landmark, we note whether the structures are contributing to the district and eligible for individual listing, but we don't actually nominate them, but it's the same thing. How zoning enhances or adversely affects our National Historic Landmark zoning review would be part of preservation planning. Local review with the Mass Historical Commission of federally and state funded projects, Section 106 review. Activity 3, advocacy for protection of resources, structures, streetscapes, archaeological lands, culturally significant landscapes. Topic 4 of activity 4 is education, but where it's not covered by other organizations. Some historical commissions do a lot of education, they have plaque programs, etc., but we don't really do that. But some examples would be the Arthur Cooper Memorial plaque and the educational program that went along with that. And then we've developed, put effort into facilitating the happening of this NARA class, which we'll talk about later. And then we also offer letters of support for applications for state historic preservation tax credits, which is a requirement of the state application. So that was the list. Holly, do you know if they want to have a pre-meeting, or do you have anything else you want to share with the commission?
I have reached out to the chairs of the HDC, as you all are well aware how extremely busy they are, as well as staff. I have not received any confirmation on whether or not they would like to have a pre-meeting with you and Angus, but obviously tackling the specific, comments and agenda topics for the agenda is obviously imperative. So that is something that I will be setting down with them on what they would like to obviously speak, probably along the lines of what you all, that's a good idea for this first initial meeting, which is obviously required with our MOU with the State Historic Preservation Office, Massachusetts Historical, and through the requirements of the CLG through the National Park Service, is really establishing what you all do, what they do, what I do. I have roles as well. So I think that's I think we're at a good part, and very happy to hear that NCTV will be taking the charge for that meeting. So
Oh, I didn't know that.
yes, it will not be the Zoom account through which we're using right now and then uploaded later. It's actually going to be live. So pretty cool.
Oh,
Yes.
oh, that's
So
great. So we'll be like live on YouTube the way the select board is, etc.
you
Got it.
got it. So
Oh, good. Well, Holly, thank you for everything you did facilitating all of that. I know it was not insignificant, and we have time, so we can talk about this maybe with some more specifics in October. Any comments on our joint meeting at this point? Okay. Staff update. I'm going to turn it over to Holly.
thank you. So as some of you are probably aware, the NPT had their second Rescuing History conference, and Mary had asked if I would speak, and I did. I represented, obviously, the HTC and the solar guidelines. That was a great online event, and obviously sea level rise and coastal resiliency and historic preservation and sustainability, where do they all meet? And it's just, I just wanted to let the commission know that I was there. And if you all didn't get a chance to take a look at, I believe, and maybe Mary could correct me if I'm wrong, that it would be available online for people to view. But it was a great event. Down to the MHC survey project. So I will let the commission know, with all the effort, we received one proposal. And currently, because of only having one proposal, we only needed 3 reviewers. We have a member from the Historical Commission and a member from the HTC that are currently reviewing along with myself. And I'm currently in the process of contacting the references as required. Received the signed contract with the MHC, which is, there's a couple of contracts. One that the town signs with the state. I got that approved at select board last week. I put that in the mail this week. So they have that. And then once we go through this selection process, just making sure, obviously, that the proposal from the bidder actually meets what we put in the RFQ, then we will let procurement know, and then they'll be moving forward on the contract phasing. And we'll be able to have a kickoff meeting. Yes.
So I had a question, Holly, so first of all, Holly sent the materials to me and asked me to look over them. And I'm really pleased to say that although we only got one, I was a little concerned, like we only got one, but it's Public Archaeology Lab, who's super well qualified.
Fantastic.
And really
Yes.
familiar with Nantucket. So,
Yes.
I don't think anybody makes money on these things. So I think they are, see the potential for a lot of work with Nantucket, which is why they're interested, which is what we had really hoped for, that we would be attractive to people of high quality to work on. So that is exciting, because this could have gone either way. And Holly, who from the HTC is reviewing it?
Stephen Welch is representing the HTC.
Okay. And what are you looking for? What is our obligation as reviewers? I just want to make sure I know what the responsibility is to support
So you're
the
making
effort.
sure that the criteria that's listed. So for instance, did they provide references? Do they have the year's experience? Did they meet those qualifications that we requested in the RFQ? Some of that obviously is prescriptive through the process of the creating the RFQ with MHC's assistance, but obviously the substance stuff that we requested for them to do.
Okay.
Are they going to be able to meet it in that timeline? And I agree with you. PAL has been around for a long time. I'm actually familiar with them from going to school at Roger Williams. They're in Rhode Island. Jenny Adams actually was an adjunct professor at one point with Roger Williams. She actually went to when it was Roger Williams College. So Rhode Island obviously is very tiny, but the preservation world is very tiny. And the fact that they've done work on our sister islands, on the vineyard in Shellmark, I think that's, yeah, we're in good hands. As much as we only had one, I was happy. In a way, I'm glad it's them, but at the same time, it would have been nice to have others. But we're fortunate. I will tell you this, that when we posted the RFQ. Obviously, as you all are aware, and if you're not, I will let you know that the process with MHC is very prescriptive, very, very prescriptive. And they down to what we do, when we do, and how we do it. And one of the requirements actually is to get the notice posted with the Mass Preservation Listserv. And once I did that, I actually received emails back whether or not people were interested, or they just wanted to know where the RFQ was. But for the most part, any of the correspondence was through our procurement office. We only received one. I don't think there were any comments or questions. Usually there's a question period that you have, and then I would have been notified, but we didn't receive anything. So I'm happy, quite frankly, that we received a company that is so prestigious in this field. So I think
It only takes one.
and
We're
I
only
think
going to
we're
hire
gonna-
one person.
Yeah. So I think we're in good hands on that.
Okay, great.
Next thing, the sewer force main 3 and bid alternates. I haven't heard anything further, except for some of our correspondence regarding the project that PIN was working on. That there's actually some information that they've been doing with their project they would like to provide to the consultants to see if that would be official. And I think you've been copied on those emails, Hillary.
Yeah.
But other than that, I haven't heard anything further.
I have a question, Holly. I mean, when we sent them our letter with the final comments on the 100% plan, we did ask for feedback. I mean, there were some questions outstanding. So, I mean, it would be nice to get a response.
I'll follow up with David, not a problem.
Okay, thank you.
And then education opportunities. I believe I've been emailing you all some things here and there that have come through. If you haven't figured out, even though May is Preservation Month, National Preservation Month through the National Park Service. June is when Nantucket usually does their Preservation Month. But September is a really big conference time frame for preservation. And there's opportunities obviously to go to, and everything is online due to the pandemic, I think still really being there. But we have passed forward through the National Trust for Historic Preservation. I have forwarded you on some of these workshops. There's one coming up next, actually on the 21st, about understanding climate change. And this is a free online. If this is something of interest to you, I recommend taking a look at it. I put it on my calendar, so hopefully I can do that as well. There's also another one through the Pass Forward initiative that the National Trust has on September 28th at 2 p.m. And this one is on an introduction to preservation law and easements. That might be very beneficial to this commission. I would recommend looking at that. Again, another free one. And then, of course, our Preservation Mass, which is, if you're not familiar with Preservation Mass, they are the state's nonprofit, and they're having their state conference, which is all online this year, September 23rd and 24th, so right around the corner. There is a nominal fee for that, but I would encourage you, if you have the time, to do that as well. So those are the educational opportunities. And of course, anything that comes across my desk, because I get a lot of different things, I will send them your way if I think there's something that would be beneficial to this commission. I think that's it.
Thanks, Holly.
You're welcome.
Okay. I had one other thing as far as an update that I forgot to put on the agenda, but we did, in our last meeting, we talked about we reviewed the part 2 of the 2 Mayflower application, and we decided on, a set of comments, and then left it to the chair and vice chair to draft the letter. And I should have sent this to everybody. Obviously, we sent it to Brona Simon, our SHPO, and to Holly. And I wanted to show it to you if I can. Where is it? Sorry. Let me just find it. It's just going to take me a minute. You know, we struggled with this because I think it was a learning process. I mean, I think we thought that in the part one, when we said it would, these are the character defining features, you know, the Park Service has decided
I have
that,
it right here, Hillary, if you want.
oh, thank you. Can you share it? Thanks,
Yep.
Holly.
Mhm.
The Park Service decided like unilaterally that this was still a contributing structure, even though it had been moved and stripped of a lot of its character defining features. And we decided when asked that we would support that. But we were really clear that there was an opportunity to restore some of these character defining features, and we were clear about what they were. And then I think we were a little taken aback when the part 2 application came in and none of that work was included in the plan. So, you know, we really, but the plan was a qualified historic rehabilitation. So we really didn't have a choice but to observe that it was. So our letter tried to walk a fine line. So we said, we acknowledge that the applicant's plan meets the standard for rehabilitation. Our support would be stronger if the applicant were also restoring the important character defining features. And then we wanted to make it clear again that relocation is a last resort of salvage, and we don't view relocation as an appropriate preservation method. And it made us uncomfortable that this building we understood why this building had been moved, because it hadn't, you know, there were extenuating circumstances. The date was unknown. You know, there wasn't an accurate survey for this building. It was permitted to be moved because
just got those submittals yesterday, or they're essentially coming in. So someone had
I think someone, Holly, can you mute? Thanks. So we clarified all of that. You know, we said, why were they permitted to be moved? And we clarified why they were. And then can you just show the end of the letter, Holly? So we just said, we appreciate, you know, that the massing is retained, the original door surround was retained. There were various things that could have been done that would have been even worse, and those were not done. We really couldn't say whether the interior, you know, we didn't have documentation about the interior, so we don't know if that's you know, if there's integrity left to maintain there. And so we said, we appreciate that these structures were reused rather than demolished. Now the new owner has the opportunity to restore the character defining features of the house at 2 Mayflower Circle. Doing so would strengthen our support of this part 2 application for the use of public funds for rehabilitation consistent with the Secretary of the Interior standards. So thanks, Holly, you can stop sharing. But, you know, it was a really difficult letter to write, actually. And it was a learning process, but I hope that I guess and I represented the wishes of the commission and, you know, kept our integrity while also doing our duty under, you know, the standards that are set by the Park Service. Any comments or questions about the project? Or Holly, I'm assuming nothing has happened yet, right?
I mean, I sent it to
Yeah.
Erin. And I know, you know, she was concerned that there was going to be kind of a, for lack of a better word, renege on the original support. And obviously that was something that was very concerning to her and the property owner, because at the end of the day, you know, most communities are not in a situation like Nantucket is, where we have a lot of contributing structures. But I think it boils down to, like you mentioned, this is a structure that had a little history to it and a lack thereof, if you will. But relocating structures on Nantucket, again, I'm going to drive this point home, is part of our heritage. It's been going on for 300 plus years. It's a part of who we are, and it's going to continue. And obviously with issues like coastal resiliency, retreat, you know, those are things that are going to be coming up to play. And you're not going to see that part go away. And of course, this commission, as well as myself, want to support historic tax credits as much as possible. So there's going to be that fine line. But again, why we've moved forward in trying to update our surveys, why that's imperative. So that way the HDC has the appropriate information before them. And in lieu of that, I do my best to provide the information as much as possible to the HDC, and with the help of Mary and her staff at NPT, and obviously the information that's available from PIN. That's how we move forward without having these updated surveys. So it all works together. Of course, one thing to, I think, come out of this particular application is that, lack of information, but they were able to figure it out. Wait a minute, this was a contributing structure. The fact of the matter is, yes, in a normal circumstance, non-Nantucket, when you move a structure, you are losing that historic setting, that part of it that makes it be contributing. But that is a part of our history, and we want to encourage these historic tax credits. So, and they are on a case-by-case basis. I think we're going to see more of them.
Hi, Dawn. Go ahead.
I just love to add one comment, and I completely agree with what Holly said in regard to how many buildings on Nantucket have been relocated over time and how it is a significant part of history. I just also like to mention, in review, in being on HDC for a long time, in many ways, I would have rather seen a structure like this moved intact to a new location where it could be utilized, rather than what we generally see, where a structure can be saved, but they want to do something more significant with the property, and the structure becomes enveloped and unrecognizable, where I feel like this is a great way to save them. And I love that people are starting to take advantage of these historic tax credits. I'm hoping that we'll see more of them.
Thank you, Dawn. Okay, any other comments, just as far as learning, or we'll have more chances to talk about all of these important issues. Okay.
And on that note, Hillary, I just want to mention that I will, if I find any other historic tax credit education opportunities, I will send them to the commission.
Thank you. Okay, moving on, the next topic on the agenda is historic pavement. So we did put in a grant for Community Preservation Act funds, and I circulated that grant application. It was a wild and hairy ride getting that in. At one point, I thought we might not actually make it, but we just had an incredible team, and thank you to the folks who helped make it happen, including the folks that aren't on this call, like the people there. Georgia has the copy that we get to keep one copy. Georgia, do you want to say something?
Well, I didn't realize until I brought the 13 copies to the office that they all need to be signed. They need to be signed in person, and they need to be signed with stuff like the taxpayer ID number and the certification of the treasurer of the Historical Commission. So I'm the treasurer now.
We had to deputize Georgia so that she could
on
sign
the spot. It was quite something, and it was very nice of the admin there. She was very sweet. She stayed open an extra 7 minutes because I had all that signing to do. I couldn't do it in 40 minutes, but it was done. So it's done and in. She was very good about it.
Georgia and I were joking that she felt that she was at a closing, and I said, well, let's hope we actually get the money.
Right.
So I will ask for is there any, we approved that we would submit this grant at our meeting. We had a process to consider different grants. We debated what to do. We chose this project and, authorized me as chair to go ahead and develop it, which I did. But I just want to ask for a motion to formally approve the grant to make sure we're happy that this is what we want to do. Would anyone like to have any discussion about the grant or make a motion?
So moved.
Thank you,
I'll second.
Tom. Thank you, Angus.
And I just
Nikki.
want to thank all involved. That was a heroic effort. Thank you all.
And we've just been joined by Kim Rose from Preservation Institute Nantucket as well. And Kim, thank you so much to pin for you and Cleary, and bringing in wonderful subcontractors who could put together proposals and help sort out exactly how we would accomplish our goal. So we couldn't have done it without you guys.
It was our pleasure. Thank you so much for reaching out to us and connecting us to that project. We're really excited and fingers crossed.
Yeah. So we're in the middle of a vote. So I was going to ask, we have a motion from Tom and a second from Angus. So Mickey,
Aye.
Angus, do you support your motion?
Yes.
Clement,
Yes.
Georgia,
Aye.
David,
Aye.
and Tom, are you in favor of your motion? And I am also in favor. So I'm not really sure. Dawn, do you know what happens next? Like when I know we have to present.
Sorry. Hi.
Hi.
Put my video back on. I got some dates thrown at me for late September, early October, but they would be in touch with you with a
Okay.
specific date and time.
Okay, so we'll keep everybody posted. Oh, and I should also thank Mickey Rowland and the Commission on Disability for going in on this with us, because from the beginning, we've always felt that we could have sidewalks properly repaired, accessible, and still historic, and retaining the character. And I think having this be a collaborative effort is really at the core of communicating that. So, okay, ADA, speaking of sidewalks, the next topic is the accessibility project in town. So I just want to share, hopefully I'll have more luck finding, sorry. Erica Mooney, the town operations manager, announced that there's going to be various repairs to sidewalks throughout the town. I'm going to share a screenshot that's kind of blurry, but I don't know if anybody saw this announcement at the select board. So if you look at this area on this map on the left, I'm sorry, this is kind of blurry, but all these areas in red are slated for accessibility improvements. And I don't know anything more than that, but it just seems that obviously we support accessibility improvements, but like, who is the contractor? What is the design? I mean, I think we've developed some ideas about successful and less successful ways to do this work. And I would hope that the town would want to have our advice on this, and to have us, helping talk to the contractor, look at the designs, and make sure that it's going to be right. Yes, Holly is raising her hand.
Yes, so I've been advised from the town manager directly that this is routine maintenance, stuff that would have been done without being in a pandemic, and that they're not touching the curbs, that they are literally taking up the brick, putting back the brick, making it more flush with the curbs that are existing. I've also been advised that the contractors have been advised if there's any historical concerns that they would reach out to me. So
Okay.
that's been set, this process. Again, these are works that have been should have been happening, but due to the COVID pandemic, we haven't been able to do.
I see. So
routine
they've identified where the bricks are really loose and coming up. Got it.
Yes.
Okay. There was one comment about Easy Street. So the Easy Street basin was totally redone, but Erica announced that it had to be redone because it didn't meet accessibility requirements.
That I'm not privy to, but I can find out a little bit further.
Yeah, the announcement was that the land bank's plan and design did not meet accessibility requirements. So
I heard that when I was actually in that meeting as well, but
Yeah.
I don't know the details of that, but I can find out.
okay. All right. Well, does everybody feel satisfied by that? I mean, because I was going to write to Erica and just say, can you give us some more details? We're available to advise or review or meet, and we care. And but it sounds like maybe I don't need to do that. So
I would advise not to. Just again, this is routine maintenance, and they have been told that if there's any concerns to reach out to me. And
okay,
of course, we'll go from there.
all right. Is there any further discussion on this from anyone on the commission?
I would just say that, oh, sorry. I would just say that, you know, if there's reconfiguration or redesign involved, that it would make perfect sense for us to be involved. But if this is just maintenance and sort of fixing things as they are, if they're following the guidelines in the repairs, then I don't see why we need to be involved.
Mickey?
Yeah, I might, just from the Commission on Disabilities perspective, contact Erica and find out a little more details. And if, you know, if I hear of anything and, you know, of interest to this board, then I'll let you know.
That sounds like a great plan. Yeah, I mean, Angus, you mentioned the word policy, following the policy. So there isn't a policy. I mean, we've recommended a policy, and that's actually this third bullet point under historic pavement, which is there's no policy. We've been told there will be a policy, told that by the town manager, by the select board. I mean, at this point, I feel like we've really helped the town understand what, you know, how to appreciate this historic material. I think we're in a good place. I just wanted to bring it up for discussion about what do we want to do regarding the unfinished business of a policy.
Well, it seemed like in general, there was a lack of communication with the DPW head or director. And I hope with the replacement that there will be better communication, and hopefully we can come to a resolve with the recommendations that we've made, that becomes policy.
Holly, as our preservation planner, advocating for policy was really on your plate. I mean, do you feel that this is unfinished business? Do you think it's appropriate to just have a memo saying, this is the policy we recommend, you know, please take it under advisement? What do you think is best?
Well, as you all are aware, I was in the process, like you just mentioned, with the previous DPW head. You all know that there's been lack of staff at DPW. I was not going to, and I'm not going to, unless I'm advised to, contact the interim DPW director. I think he's got enough on his plate at the moment without pushing, you know, where this policy draft is. I never received it from the previous director, so I can't really start with something without having it. And until I'm advised, I'm not going to do that. So again, I do think that the town realizes the need and the want, especially from this commission. It would make sense, but I'm not going to push it when there's a lot of different moving parts in town right now, especially with a department that has lack of staff. So that's how I feel.
Thank you, Holly. I mean, we have our document that we published on our website. It's advice from the town department to the rest of the town departments. It's there. I think, you know, that's our preferred policy. And we could just, you know, continue to move forward the way things have been, which I guess is what we'll do unless anybody has any specific suggestion.
I think we're in a situation where we're going to be doing catch up. If we happen by what looks like a routine repair that has turned into something else, we're going to end up saying, you know, to Holly, or what's happening here? Why is this being done that way? The way we did with the curbs on Judith Chase Lane and on Upper Main Street. It's unfortunate, but it seems like that's what has to be done unless there's a stated town repair policy with regard to sidewalks and curbs. I don't see how we can do that until there is some kind of stated town repair policy.
I share your concern, Georgia. Dawn, as our liaison to the select board, do you have any advice for us here?
Hi. I mean, my understanding is the same thing that Holly said, that this is all routine maintenance. It's being done by Victor, who knows what he's doing and is familiar. And they'll come to Holly if there's anything in question. So I think the concerns have been heard, and this is not a major redo. There are no curbings being changed.
Yeah, and I'm not speaking about this issue. I'm talking about the outstanding matter of the a kind of universal agreement that there should be a policy on work on historic pavement that.
Oh, yeah, I apologize. I left the room first. I have a dentist appointment, so I have to go in 15 minutes. But I think this honestly just has to be tabled until we have hired a new DPW director.
Okay. All right. So moving on, an update on the NARA course. So David and I have been working with Marion Connolly, who leads the education subcommittee of NAREB, the Nantucket Association of Real Estate Brokers. And we had a call last week with Anita Hill and confirmed that NAREB will be offering as one of their fall continuing education programs for their members, the state approved course on selling historic homes, which is really like everything that we wanted to have happen. So we're so thrilled. The date is October 27th. Anita has asked if I would teach sections of the course, and she's asked David and I to propose a format for the course. So we are developing that, and we're going to present it to her on October 1st. I'm not available to teach on October 27th. I actually have to be a student all day that day with my master's program. So I asked if we could do it on October 28th. And so if they move the date, I'll help teach it. If they don't, someone else will help teach it, or will teach Anita how to teach it. She's she's one of the best, so I'm sure she'll be a quick study. We're also going to work out other speakers and presenters, maybe have a panel. So Holly and Mary, you'll probably hear from us about this. And it's a curriculum that's defined by the state, but it's a really good curriculum. They overhauled it this year. So I think it's going to cover everything we're concerned about. And hopefully it'll give the brokers a fresh perspective on the value of historic homes and how to find the right buyers for these homes, where the fact that it's historic is an asset rather than a deficit, which is a win-win for everybody.
Great, Hillary.
Is there a way, Hillary Clement, is there a way any of us could audit this presentation?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know.
It
Dawn,
might
do
be of
you know?
interest.
Do you know if these classes are open to non-NAREB members?
I mean, generally they're not, but they are usually. I'm not sure if it will be the same. If it will be on Zoom. Is it going to be on Zoom, or is it going to be in person?
So we're moving forward with the idea that it's going to be on Zoom, but it's not. I mean, I guess Marion and NAREB will decide.
Then, I mean, I would just ask for permission to watch. I mean, I would say normally they were always at Fairgrounds Restaurant, so space could have been an issue. But if it's on Zoom, that's kind of a non-issue.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
Okay. Well, we're going to meet again before the course is offered, so we'll have an update for everybody. Okay. So moving on to the main topic that for interactive discussion. This is the time when we start thinking about town meeting. I encourage everybody to familiarize themselves with the deadline, the dates for town meeting. It's at the end of the select board packet. If you listen to the end of the meeting of the last two meetings, Libby goes through all of the details. It's a highly orchestrated process that moves like a freight train through all of these dates. There are many committee meetings, and fortunately they're all on Zoom. So you'll be a really, really well-informed voter if you listen to all of these meetings. And this is the time when citizens warrants are proposed and developed. So, as the Preservation Planning Commission, this is an opportunity for us to talk about what laws we might want to see adjusted to further the interests of preservation, what actions might be appropriate to support that other people might be motivated to propose. And there's also the issue of there's a town budget gets voted on. So this is when budgets are developed as well. So I'm going to share my screen because I have this work plan so I can take some notes. And so I have a couple ideas of things that might happen. The Massachusetts Historical Commission publishes a booklet of advice for local historical commissions called Preservation Through Bylaws and Ordinances. By the way, something I learned recently, if it's a town, you have bylaws. If it's a city, you have ordinances. So we have bylaws, same thing, semantic. And one of the common activities that could be assigned to a historical commission is demolition delay. And a lot of towns have a demolition delay, which includes a process of determining what buildings are preferably preserved and then imposing a delay period during which alternatives to demolition are pursued. Now, you shouldn't see demolition delays for preservation purposes in towns that have a historic district, because the point is if the place is preferably preserved, then it should be protected by the HDC. Mary Bergman wrote a bylaw proposing a demolition delay in Nantucket, and then that wasn't called at the 2020 town meeting, and the motion was to deny, so it just went away. But I thought that it's something that we should discuss. It wouldn't be unconventional, but one of our major concerns is demolition of historic structures. And we are interested in various things that we could do to prevent demolition of historic structures. One of the things we're doing to prevent historic structures is improving our surveys, but are there other things that could be done? Another topic is that we have supported limitations on swimming pools in very small lots adjacent to the historic districts, the R5 area. We supported the planning board's motion to restrict swimming pools on these lots. And the basis for that was that we felt it changed the character of the community too much because of all the screening that's required. That's the historic concern. There are other concerns, noise, lighting, etc. But we did take that action. And there is a concern about these small pools that are identified as spas that are coming in the old historic district. And Clement, I know the Sconset small area plan had comments about pools. So
Yes.
yeah, what is your concern? You didn't mention, it doesn't mention in the small area plan, these these very large spas that can be 150 square feet in the SOH, but was that something you all talked about?
No, I don't. We did not talk about the small spas. We talked about pools. If you'll give me a minute, I'll find it.
While Clement's looking for that, just as a advisor to the HTC Wisconsin and town, we've seen a number of pools proposed and approved for Sconset, and in town where there really isn't room for pools, there have been many applications proposed and approved for these water features / spas that are basically small pools. And when you put lighting into them, and there's the sound that carries with it, but as you say, what really affects things visually is the diminished vistas that occur when you put up the evergreen screening that's required to keep these somewhat invisible. So I think I saw something in the Sconset area plan about having the square footage count as ground cover, which could probably help in the tighter situations. But anyway, just filling space.
No,
you may have found your thing.
Angus, you're exactly right. The mention is that because, as you say, people are trying to shoehorn these pools in and not have it count for ground cover. So one way that we saw to perhaps eliminate some of the discussion of these pools is to have it included in the ground cover.
How does that get done, Clement? Is that a bylaw change that has to be made?
No. This is
Zoning?
the SAP, the Wisconsin Advisory Plan. It was requested from the All Over Nantucket Advisory Plan to come to redo, according to some law, all the master plans. So the Nantucket Planning and Economic Commission has asked Sconset to revise the goals and policies of what we are looking forward to, what we are just determining as our future growth and development. So there's several communities that are doing this. Nantucket is doing one, Sconset, and I'm sure Nantucket. So anyway, under land use, the land use section, we have a recommendation that the square footage of swimming pools be included in the ground cover calculations for zone Sconset residents 10 and 1. We endorse the existing prohibition of pools in the old historic district of Sconset. So SOH zone, their pools are prohibited.
And then
entirely.
when you've made that recommendation, the planning and economic development board accepts that, and then it becomes the rule for Sconset.
We will be presenting this at some point to the
On
planning
Monday.
commission.
You're presenting it on Monday.
Thank you. We're presenting it on Monday at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock.
I think the meetings might be at 6 actually, but
My
whenever they're.
My question is, when does it become effective and how does it
So,
become effective?
Georgia, it would have to be a change to the zoning code, which would have to be passed at town meeting by 2/3.
That's my question.
Yeah.
So
But
all we're
this-
doing with our Sconset area plan is making recommendations for our
Right.
future. We're not making a citizen's warrant to do this, but we are recommending this as a good idea, good
Right,
policy.
and then it gets added to the town meeting warrant as a zoning item, which generally
Hopefully, yes.
they slide through.
Well, only if the planning board decides, and the pool stuff, I would not say it would slide through. So there's just, people get really concerned about, their right to have a pool on their property. And And the purpose of the small area plans is to inform the master plan. So Sconset has developed their small area plan. They'll present it to the NP and EDC. And we then, the planning commission, the planning department is supposed to be, you know, working up this new master plan because the last one was from 2008. And the announcement at the July meeting was that a new master plan, it doesn't have to be approved at town meeting. It only has to be accepted by the planning board, but it's traditional on Nantucket to bring these master plans to town meeting for approval by the voters. And that would not be at this coming town meeting. It would be at the next year. So 2023.
Correct. It
Yeah.
was 2009 when it went to town meeting and it was unanimously adopted.
Yeah, 2000.
Yeah. But before then, you know, there might be other actions. So we have now as a guest in our meeting, Anne Duez, who has been working on this issue a lot. And do you want to introduce yourself? I mean, Anne reached out to me because we've, you know, supported limitation. We've expressed concerns about pools on very small lots for the reasons of aesthetics being the historical concern, the cultural landscape, the visual quality. These are the things that are of concern to us and also of concern to some other folks. So I invited Anne to come to our meeting to get general feedback on her thoughts. So Anne. Oh, we can't hear you.
Unmute. Thank you, Hillary. Yes, my interest in this matter became active last October when the first plan application went before the Historic District Commission for a house and a pool on one of the lots in the Mueller subdivision. And by way of background, I live on Mill Street, and the Mueller family decided when their mother died to subdivide nearly 4 acres of land.
Oh, and sorry, Anne, I need to interrupt you because we can't really talk about any specific properties. We're just talking about the concept because I didn't put any properties on our agenda. So if we could just talk generally about the concern and not about your specific situation. Thanks.
Oh, okay. Well, that's what sparked it was some development issues. And so I started looking very closely at this whole question of pools and spas and tried to understand the legislation that enabled pools to begin with and created the restriction in the old historic district, and then some subsequent changes to rules and definitions that have created a situation that I think is anomalous based on what people wanted in 2011, which is that we have a definition of a pool and a definition of a spa that are at loggerheads with one another. And so I'm spending time trying to investigate that, trying to understand it better, and trying to think if there's a way we can solve the problem and the conflict in the way the rules are being applied in the old historic district, specifically of Nantucket, but that would apply to Sconset as well, of course. So that's what I'm working on, and it's been an eye-opener.
Thank you, Anne. So, I mean, the question for the commission, I hope we can, I know it's sometimes challenging on Zoom, but wake up, everybody. I hope we can have a freewheeling discussion about what role, if any, our commission should play in commenting on or even sponsoring, if we can do, I mean, of course we can do that. It's really the voters who decide, but any kind of adjustment. And as I just want to highlight what Anne defined as a problem, which I agree personally is a problem, which is in 2011, voters at town meeting voted to ban pools in the historic district of Nantucket, the old historic district, and the Sconset Sconset old historic district, whatever it's called. So SOH and OHD. And that was the recommendation from the planning board at the time was to make pools available by special permit. And it was all based on an extensive survey that a lot of people responded to that showed without any shadow of a doubt, like 95% of people who were homeowners, and this is less than 1% of homeowners that we're talking about on Nantucket. This is really only relevant. It only affects the people who live in these two neighborhoods. We're overwhelmingly in favor of no swimming pools. And so based on the survey, the planning staff suggested by permit only, and a new definition of swimming pools, which hadn't existed before, and some setbacks. Then the planning board didn't want to see a special permit and ultimately decided that there should be, further study. But when it got to the floor at town meeting in 2011, there was a motion made by Dirk Roggeveen to just ban them. He said, this is what the voters, the residents survey clearly shows, ban them. We don't want pools in these areas. And so that is what actually was voted on by 2/3 majority, and pools were banned. Fast forward to 2017, this new definition, a new category was created called spa. So swimming pool in 2011 was defined as any body of water for recreational swimming that is more than 2 feet deep, more than 150 square feet of surface area, and more than 1,000 gallons of water. Nobody, I guess, noticed that you cannot have a body of water that's 10 by 15 by 2 and have it be less than 1,000 gallons. It's like 3,000 gallons. But anyway, that was the definition at the time in 2011, and they were banned in the historic districts. So fast forward to 2017, and there's this new definition of spa that's proposed at town meeting. It passes, it was developed, by the planning board. There are no minutes for any of the planning board meetings in 2017. So we don't know any of the nature. We'd have to talk to people who were there. Linda Williams was the chair at the time. And there's no minutes from the town meeting. So although the definitions, there were several definitions expanding, allowing more things to not contribute to ground cover and other things that allow bigger houses, but it was called, but we don't know why it was called. And this definition of spa was now adopted, and the definition of spa is anything up to 150 square feet. So you can have, something for, lounging about in the water that is the size of a small bedroom in Sconset, Old Historic District, and in the town. And that is now suddenly, a permitted use, because the definition, it was now a defined item, and also it was not excluded. Like swimming pools are not a permitted use in these districts, but spa was not addressed as a non-permitted use. So by definition, it is permitted. So that's the background.
Hillary, I think we need to make it very, very clear that the definition of spa included 2 out of 3 of the criteria for pool, the opposite. In other words, less than 150 square feet, more than 2 feet deep, zero language on gallonage.
Yeah, zero language on gallonage. So what some applicants are doing is like they're creating these tiered things with wells so that they get under the 1,000 gallons. So anyway, now that's, I hope it's helpful that I went through all of that history, and now I'd like to hear from everybody about if there's anything that should be done or that we might like to do as a commission, or what we want to do, what would be appropriate, and what's the pleasure of the board.
I call them frog ponds. And
You call them what, Tom?
frog ponds, and it's just an end run, in my opinion, of the planning board to get back around to where they were with the swimming pools, plain and simple. And that's the way this town operates.
I don't have any specific numbers or parameters that we, without giving it further thought. But I do think that it's definitely an important topic. I think it's definitely within our wheelhouse to deal with it. At the HGC gets lots of these applications, and on the Historic Structures Advisory Board, we see them pretty regularly downtown, and we don't have much teeth to prevent them. So I think if we can define them a little better and get better, I don't know, just more rules on the books, I think we'll have a little bit better opportunities to turn a lot of these down, because it's really hard to at the moment.
The people have spoken at town meeting, and they found out another way just to express it, to get around it. And as you say, there's no background information that we can go back on. There's no minutes from the town meeting. There's no anything. And that's just how things work around here. I agree with Mickey. I think we ought to try and do something about it. Somebody's got to push back, or it's going to continue.
Other comments from the commissioners?
I think it's clearly part of the commission's, when you talk about cultural landscape and visual quality, and the impact of pools is significant. So I think anyway, if we could get some more, I mean, you hate to add for more rules, but because obviously they've found a way to get around banning pools by calling them a spa. So I do think perhaps including pools and ground cover would have some impact. So I definitely think this should be, looked into.
Well, we're talking about this under the context of ATM articles. So perhaps we could think about an ATM article ourselves. It seems to me there was a lot of discussion about this at this year's ATM. Wasn't there a pool?
Yeah, that was, and we supported that, Georgia. It was a planning board motion to restrict pools on lots in RC5, right?
Yeah.
That were less 7,500 square feet and less.
Yeah. So I think why don't we think about whether we would support or write an ATM article that would limit pools and spas, if the spas are what we're going after, and we're annoyed that planning board has found this end run. Can we create our own definition that's smaller, that includes a so-called spa, a lap pool, or whatever it is that people are trying to use as an end run?
Yeah, I think a clear definition, and it sounds like at one point, and yeah, how much has it really changed, that that the majority of people did not want pools in the historic district, so, or in the old historic Wisconsin in town. And so it seems like there just needs to be it's only as strong as the weakest link. So you don't want to keep someone from having that koi pond that's 2 feet deep and 6 feet by 3 feet or something. But when it turns into people getting into a body of water and all the things that go with it, it really gets into the pool spa zone. And when there's a buffer of lots of property and distance between houses, it's easier to negotiate that sort of thing. But when it's cheek to jowl in these denser areas of town and Sconset, it really does diminish the historic character of those places. So I think just a clearer definition of what counts and doesn't count.
And I think if there's popular support for it, as there has been expressed, I think it would be a good thing for us to be either proposing or backing.
Okay.
Another aspect is impacting the Dark Skies Initiative. So that's another way to tie this in. Pools, spas, they require lights and
David and Barbara, did you have any comments that you wanted to make? Not necessary, but I just want to invite
Yeah.
you to comment.
Yes, please.
David?
Yeah, I'm with Georgia. I think that if we can kind of define the parameters here and maybe propose some sort of bylaw at town meeting, I think that we would get support. So I'm definitely in favor of kind of maybe doing a little bit more research on this and kind of defining the characteristics so that we do understand the differences between a pool and a spa. And just personally and candidly, I'd like to see a blanket policy of no spas in SOH or ROH.
And David, why do you want to see no spas as opposed to like a more spa size like spa?
Because it needs to be screened, if I'm correct, right, Hillary?
Yes.
That's exactly why. I think it changes the character of these neighborhoods. I mean, I'm not going to speak about a specific property, but I was utilizing a spa in town, and the evergreen screening was obtrusive and not in congruence with the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, Barbara.
Yeah, I'm totally in agreement with the historic, in the historic district, but I don't think we should negate also looking at a definition for even outside of those districts, for especially when you consider something like the gallonage of some of these pools, even in other areas that are so large, some of them. And I have to wonder about the environmental impact, the impact on our water supply. So I wonder if there isn't some liaison with some of the environmental impact. I know in our area out in Surfside, most of the houses are now being put in with pools, and they can be quite noisy. There's the noise element that is a factor. So yes, I think it's definitely
this is David
in our,
again.
yeah.
I know that
David? Sorry, Barbara, are you finished with your remarks? Yeah, okay. David, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, I'm also noticing a trend, from a pool development standpoint. These pools are getting bigger too, if I'm not mistaken. So I kind of share Barbara's concern that maybe we could address pools outside the bounds of SOH and the old historic district in town.
So I'll just chime in that I think, our mandate is the character, the visual quality, all of these things. So there are lots of people who are concerned about pools. And, we individually can exercise our concern about pools, but from a commission perspective, I'm just I would be a little concerned about stepping out of our lane.
Yeah.
But I do think in the old historic district, it's just hard to screen anything, I mean, and that's what we come up against. Holly, as our preservation planner, what are your thoughts on this issue?
Well, first, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask the question, or the blank comment about there are no minutes from 2017, because personally, I was the land use planner for the planning board at that time. We had plenty of meetings. There are minutes available on the town's website. So if there's specific minutes that are missing, then that would be something that I would request somebody to, ask staff.
Are you looking at the minute? Did you look at the website? Because I
Well,
went there to try to find it and I didn't see them.
What I'm
That's
looking
why I
at
made
right
the
now, and I can, is the statement, there's just a blank statement of saying that there's no planning board minutes from 2017 is a little misleading, and that's my my concern.
Okay, so let me clarify. I went to the archive and I looked for minutes for 2017 and I didn't find any minutes. That doesn't mean they don't exist, but they were not publicly available. And it could be that I made a mistake, or it could be that they were never posted. So I'd love to see the minutes. I mean, it's not like I want there to be no minutes. I would like
Yeah,
to, I would
no.
expect that there would be minutes. I was really surprised.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm trying to get into this. Sorry, I've got so many things that are open. My apologies. So, again, I would be remiss if I didn't make that comment that there are plenty of minutes available on the town's website from 2017. And I'm trying to show them to you, but in that regard, nevertheless, yes, there's a lot of concerns. I think even from the HTC's perspective, I don't want to speak for them, but they have to look at these applications. Again, their purview is they don't want to see it. It's not the use, it's not the light, it's not the sound. That's their purview. All the other things are additional bylaws. Those are additional requirements within the town. Those are up to the agent and the property owner to make sure that those are met. The purview is the appropriateness, the COA. And unfortunately, yes, the visibility quality, it means that the vegetation needs to be put up in that instant at the time of inspection and in perpetuity. So of course that would be something that maybe the HTC may have the bandwidth to join you in this effort. I don't know. I don't want to speak for them, and I don't think Dean would want to speak for them, but maybe that's something to have a discussion with them, because yes, it does put it on them. But
Holly,
again, yes.
I am not ready to speak to the HDC or speak for the HDC on that matter at this moment, but I do have minutes for 2017 from the planning board online. All the months are there. We can pick out the minutes, from specific meetings fairly simply. I'm happy to show you guys, happy to share the screen and just do a little step-by-step if you would like me to. Just let me know, Madam Chair.
So I'm just looking at my notes. Agendas refer to a joint meeting of the select board and the planning board of a meeting on Wednesday, July 12, 2017 to discuss warrant articles for the special town meeting of 2017. The meeting is posted on the planning board site with no packet and no meetings and no minutes. There was no posting on the select board pages for this meeting. The select board posted a meeting with the finance committee. The planning board discussed warrant article. So the issue is where are the minutes from the meeting where the warrant article was discussed, so we can understand why. We want to understand. This is not about gotcha. This is about why was this change proposed? Like, what was the purpose? What was the need? What can we understand about what people were thinking at the time? The planning board discussed the warrant article to create the definition of spa on August 14th, 2017. Linda Williams chaired the board at the time. There was a public hearing and the proposed warrant articles were in the packet. The meeting was not a special meeting. Usual business also occurred, and there are no minutes. So I think the minutes and the notes that we'd be interested in, Holly and Kadeem, are for the meeting of August 14th, 2017, where that was the meeting where they discussed this bylaw change or this definition change. And so if you have those, we would really.
So I do, Madam Chair, I do see the packet for August 14th, 2017. And you are correct in that I do not see minutes for that specific meeting. There, we did say there are minutes for others, but that specific meeting, you are correct. I do not see minutes attached there. Totally something we could look into to try to figure out where that is, but Holly does have it up on the screen now, so I'll let her take over from here.
So, but I don't really want to get into obviously there are minutes, so I apologize for implying that there are no minutes there. But I couldn't find the minutes for the meeting I was interested in. And if it exists, I'd love to see it. I hope you could share. But just substantively, Holly, as our preservation planner, you've heard from every member on the commission who feels that the definition of spa is creating a problem, and that it would be an appropriate project for us to work on with a view towards an action at town meeting. And we'd like to have your advice as our staff liaison. And as a resident of Nantucket who cares about historic preservation.
Yeah, absolutely. This is something that this commission wants to move forward with, and that would be something to obviously bring up to the planning board, that you all would want to sponsor this particular article. Again, that fleshing out of what exactly would it entail. You got to remember, whenever you're not just creating you're doing a bylaw change, you're doing an amendment to the definition, what that would look like, and having that initial discussion. This is the time to really bring it up, that this is something that you would want to move forward with. And maybe this is something that you want to bring up to the HTC, maybe at the CLG meeting, with a joint effort. But yes, no, I agree. It does bring up concern when you don't have clear definitions and people are circumventing certain things, it seems. But again, I just want to remind, what the HDC's purview is, and talking about sound and lighting is definitely something of concern, but not their purview.
Right. I appreciate you reminding the commission of that because it's a really important point. And yeah.
Madam Chair, if you have a
Yeah.
second, I would, so Ann Dwys, that is, did reach out to me about a month ago, if not more at this point, when I was in my other position as an administrative specialist, essentially to look for a comprehensive survey, essentially, of all the pools/spas that have been approved in the last few years. And it was a rather large undertaking, so a quick email unfortunately didn't cover it. So I did ask Ann to put a public records request in, and she has done that at this point. So myself and a few of my coworkers are going to be putting our heads together to try to figure out the best way to do so. We've actually switched systems within the last few years, so that makes it a little hard. And there were some things that were almost only like written down years and years ago. So there's just a lot to put together, but we do plan on doing that, and hopefully we'll have a report for Ann and really anyone who wants to see it, shortly.
Thank you, Kadeem.
Sounds good. Okay, so if I can try to summarize the discussion, it sounds like everyone thinks this is of historical concern. And when I say this, I mean the spas in the historic districts of Sconset and Town of Nantucket. And that the definition that was passed in 2017 seems to maybe contravene what the residents tried to accomplish in 2011. That's been observed by everybody. And that Holly has advised that this might be something to discuss with the HDC. And several people have asked that we might bring or support a warrant article. And I'm trying to figure out, maybe I'll just pause with that, because I also want to talk about the other idea that I had around maybe something with demolitions. I want to hear from other people's idea of things to add to the list. And then maybe we could decide, what the mechanism is, what do we do? And I just wanted to invite Ann to make any final comments or questions regarding our discussion.
First of all, thank you so much. I'm hugely encouraged by everybody's thoughts and comments coming at it from different perspectives, different viewpoints, and different backgrounds on the island. It's something I've become absolutely passionate about. Having been here since 1962 and watched the changes and living in the old historic district, I will be doing quite a lot of work on this over the next few weeks before I leave, and I will continue remotely doing as much work as I possibly can. And I will keep Hillary apprised of what I'm doing and what I'm learning, so she can give feedback to you all. But I'm very open to any direct conversations with anybody or advice or other things that might help us all move forward to solve this, this what I view as a serious problem. So thank you for listening to me and being supportive.
Thank you, Ann. I'll just propose that, oh, sorry, Angus, did you have a hand up?
I think that, there's clearly a concern that pool, spa, whatever you want to call it, is compromising the integrity of the cores of our historic districts. And if it's beyond the purview of the HDC, we just need to seek the venues that are in control. And if that's a warrant article or creating a bylaw, then that seems like it's going to enable the HDC more than anything else. But I think often their hands are tied because they're fighting with zoning, and so I think that's probably where our focus needs to be. And as she does her further investigations, we'll probably be able to inform that guidance as well.
So I'm just
of the history of the HDC this summer, so I know exactly where that all comes from, and also watching the HSAB comments as well.
So our next meeting is October 15th. When are citizens warrants due, and November what?
November 15th, they are due. My conversations just briefly with people who are somewhat familiar with this issue and quite familiar with town process is that it might be better to come as a citizens warrant article, because if I were to lay back in the weeds and wait for an official body to take it up, it might not happen. And then I will have missed my opportunity, my window up till November 15th to do something. I think my strategy will be to go ahead and try to put together a citizen warrant article initiative, have it ready to go for the 15th of November. If it turns out that your board or another board or some official body is ready to do it and committed, I could drop it easily. But I don't want to be in a situation of not having done it and then nobody else does it either.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you for sharing that. And thank you. You're welcome to stay for the rest of our discussion. Maybe you have other ideas about other things that are important in your neighborhood. We'd love to hear them. We'll continue. I mean, the commission has made it very clear they want to continue to work on this. So we'll certainly be on our agenda for October. Other topics. So demolition. Does anybody want to take up this conversation? Right now, we're just having conversation about demolition, or do you want me to explain more what I was thinking? Tom?
Are we talking about the demolition of a whole house, or taking part of it and taking it to the dump and that kind of thing? Or which part of that are we talking about?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, because demolition can be defined by towns as either partial demolition or total demolition. Some towns, I learned this from Holly actually, some towns consider removal of historic windows a demolition. Right, Holly, you told me that.
New Bedford.
Yeah, so it is something that can be defined. And at this point, I'll just go ahead and tell you guys a little bit more about what I've learned. So you know me. So at this point, Nantucket has a demolition delay law, which is really for the purposes of housing reuse, for salvage, for affordability, and just for reduction of waste. So our demolition delay law puts the power in the hands of the building inspector. Is it Holly, what is it? Building commissioner?
Building commissioner.
And sorry, can you just explain to me, who is our building commissioner?
Paul Murphy.
Paul Murphy, okay, and he's different from Marcus Silverstein.
Correct.
I mean, I know he's personally different.
Yes.
Yes, they're two different jobs.
Yes.
Okay, so Paul Murphy has the responsibility under our zoning bylaw, or sorry, our demolition delay bylaw, to, if there is a demolition permit being sought, he needs to determine whether or not the house is suitable for reuse. And if there's a 30-day delay. During that time, he determines if it's suitable for reuse. If it's suitable for reuse, he can impose another 30 days, during which time it has to be advertised as available for reuse. And by the way, this is not historic structures. This is any structure. This is just a general demolition delay for any structure. So the applicant can actually start this 60-day clock, if 30-day clock / 60-day clock advertising period they can start it even before they get the demolition permit and even before they have HDC. So it's a completely separate. Am I right about that, Holly? Yes. Okay. So so that's our demolition delay bylaw. It has nothing to do with historic structures. And the question is, do we, would it be helpful to our historic district commission, who has absolute ability to stop any demolition, including partial demolition, to have in our town code more definition of what demolition is, additional concept about preferably preserved. Demolition delay ordinances and bylaws are frequently adopted by towns that have a historical commission, whether or not they have a historic district or not. Sorry, they're usually used in towns that don't have that they're used outside of the historic district. And they, the voters or the town council would give the historical commission the right to impose a demolition delay on historic structures that are determined to be preferably preserved. And then the law specifies the definition of a demolition, and it also specifies the time period, which can be as short as 3 months or as long as 18 months. Sometimes there are additional restrictions, for instance, penalties for demolition without a permit. Sometimes it's specified that if the demolition happens on an unauthorized basis, the applicant cannot apply for a building permit within a certain period of time. I'm not making any suggestions here. I'm just reviewing what exists out there in other towns. Sometimes, some towns like Newton does this. You can't pre-clear properties. So you can't, as an applicant, you can't apply for the demo permit and then sell the property with the demo permit. The demo permit does not transfer. So the question is, would it be helpful, or would it be just completely duplicative and cumbersome to attach to our existing demolition delay process through an act at town meeting that would need to be approved by 50% majority of the voters, a concept that houses are preferably preserved? This information would really this information is useful because it's useful to the HDC. Because the HDC is the one that needs to deny the demolition. We don't want to create confusion through duplication. And I want to, I don't know if Mary, if you're still tuning in, I still see you on the screen, but you went through this bravely and diligently, and I'm sure you learned something in the process. So we'd certainly want to benefit from that learning. And so I just leave that out there as another possible action, and I'd love to hear comments on it, thoughts, reactions from the commissioners. Yes, Angus.
Well, so in Wisconsin Advisory and Historic Structures Advisory, we're focused on those areas and not the rest of the island. So I don't know what's going on with demolition in the rest of the island, really. When something comes up and we say preferable, is that legal language? Is that something that has teeth? Because in general, there's some properties or buildings that aren't significant, but there's still, there's still value to the structure itself for environmental reasons. But then there are often cases where there is some sort of historical significance to the structure, and when there's an application for demo or remove, we we pretty much understand that most of the time it's going to be removed. Demolished. And so the concern is if there is any other language like preferred, prefer for it to be, is there any sort of legal term for doing something more than just letting it be demolished? You had mentioned preferred, and I don't know what that.
So the kind of boilerplate demolition delay bylaw that was developed in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and is adopted by many towns has a concept called preferably preserved. So the first step is to decide if the home is potentially historic. Mary, you have your hand up, which I appreciate. Could you please enlighten us?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I did have to step away and chat with somebody, so I'm just coming back in. But essentially, I know that you mentioned earlier, Hillary, the idea that, in theory, we have this local historic district that covers the whole island. So we shouldn't need a demolition delay law because everything is being approved or denied by the HDC. As someone who's been watching this closely, what I'm seeing the breakdown in is a lot of times there's no real protocol in establishing whether something is significant or not. There seems to be a lack of understanding regarding terms like significance, contributing, and, as you were just hinting at, preferably preserved. So the idea is a building can be historic, and then it can be contributing, and then it can be preferably preserved. The ultimate example of this, whatever architectural movement or moment in time, is something that you really don't want to be demolished. What I'm seeing is there's so much of not wanting to upset somebody one way or the other that I think of, like 10 Beach, I think is a really great example of a house where there was no consensus as to whether that was significant or not. So the designer was encouraged to retain a certain part of the structure, which is no longer significant or historic and probably didn't meet their programmatic needs either. So I would really be supportive of any initiatives that could allow for that. One of the things that was so appealing to me about a demolition delay law was it really created a forum for actually determining the significance of a structure. And if you go back and look at building with Nantucket in mind, there's a lot about demolitions and how it's the last resort. I think you're even supposed to post on a building if it's going to be demolished. We don't.
Yes.
So it reminds me that we do have a lot of good enabling documentation in building with Nantucket in mind, if we go back to that. And I understand the HDC is so overworked and so overburdened, but it does seem like sometimes people think a structure is more significant than it is. And then there's a fight over whether it should be saved or not. There needs to be a better process for determining if something is significant and should be saved, or if it should go away and something new can come. I don't know if that's helpful or complicated.
No, it's very helpful. I mean, I think what Mary highlighted was there's a problem. The problem is there's not a process for determining significance. B, that there's these definitions exist, and what would be the solution. So other comments from the commissioners about whether or not we might want to do some work on this? Yes, Clement.
Just one more comment. I mean, from the very beginning of our meeting, we were talking about something that's been relocated. I think in Wisconsin, what we try to do is when someone wants to demolish something, say, we want it reused, we want it moved. So, and we've been successful in moving some structures. Of course, moving a whole house is another problem. This also ties into the reuse of the materials. And if we could have some salvage place where people could go and say, I'll take those 4 windows, or I'll take the floorboards. That's it all fits in together somehow. If you move a historic structure, does it lose its historic history if it loses its location? if you reuse parts of it, they're still historic somehow. So, and I must admit, I thought the demolition delay bylaw was enacted to give everybody 30 more days to decide, as Mary said, is this contributing? Is it not? What has to be? I
Yeah, it's
misread
not
that.
actually. Yeah, it's not. It's they happen in parallel. One can happen before the other, and it's purely about reusability and salvage, which is, you know, so that's the town expressing their value of wanting to see things reused.
Well, that's admirable, but if you want it to be reused, but there's nowhere to put it to get the reuse done, then we're
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
this
I
is a really good point, and that would be another potential if we did want to do a revision of the demo delay bylaw to extend it to have a process to determine if it's preferably preserved historically, which the HDC would then have to, you know, decide what they wanted to do with that information. We could also address the length, because, you know, if a house is available and it's a great house and there's no place to put it, I heard from, you know, someone in the housing reuse area that they really need about 6 months. They need 6 months to find a place to put the house. Holly, you had your hand up.
Thank you. Yes, so I wanted to just bring up the fact that as we've all been talking about sustainability in general, the WPI students on that project, they're just kicking off now. And in my involvement is this whole aspect of what we all discussed. And I think it would be very helpful to see what they come up with, because looking at policies, procedures, what other jurisdictions do is going to be part of their course. So obviously, I think it's very important to understand why Nantucket is at where it is. The fact that we had the benefit of this special act that created the HDC to begin with in 55 prior to the federal law, that gives them the power of definitions. As Mary had alluded, Appendix C of Building with Nantucket in Mind really it talks about all sorts of different aspects of it. And then other communities within the Commonwealth aren't so lucky as Nantucket. I always say Nantucket is very beneficial, or very unique and lucky in this regards, because they have to follow, other communities have to follow on the demolition delay bylaw, and which only provides obviously that window of opportunity. Well, Nantucket's a little unique because we have this special act that gives the HDC the power to say yay or nay to a demolition, and that's it. I mean, if they don't get the COA to demo or move, they can't. Whereas other communities don't have that benefit. So I think there's a couple of things here of looking at maybe seeing exactly. I would rather wait, is what I'm getting at, to see what WPI comes up with from a sustainability perspective, because that's been my discussions with other staff members within the town on sustainability, even town admin, is that right now it's all of the burden, if you will, is on the HDC to say no on a demo. I'm just putting this demolition on the table, everything, whether it's historic, contributing or non-contributing, everything. It's on the heads of the HDC. And from a sustainability perspective, you know, that is not sustainable. That is also not, that's opposite of how Nantucketers have been. We've always reused structures. Look at the town of Sherburne, our first settlement. When it moved into town, they relocated structures. They put them back together, all timber frame. You know, they were cited differently. I mentioned that actually at the Rescuing History Conference. The fact that, you know, they were even cited on the lot in a sustainable way. So I mention all this to say it would be nice to see what WPI students come up with from their sustainability class, of their efforts working with the town on what could be strength, what could be done. And if the demolition delay bylaw that Nantucket has, again, which is unique from other really locations, ours is not like others, from the fact that, you know, maybe there's ways to strengthen that, and kind of taking that burden off, if you will, of the HDC from that process, and really really look at what we have already with it building with Nantucket in mind. Because A, a structure is not a significant structure, or B, the structure is protected only by a reason of its presence within the historic district, and it is not contributing to the district. Those are, it's outlined within building with Nantucket in mind. Again, it also goes back to our surveys. I stress this every time I can, and I mention it to you all as well as the HDC. Updating our surveys is imperative, because you can't protect what you don't know that you have. Again, that's the important part. And I think we need to acknowledge the fact that this commission, along with the HDC, along with becoming a CLG, is moving in the right direction. We have all these different issues that we've discussed today. We've done really great things. It's going to continue, in order to get there and get better. And I guess maybe my point is on this is maybe wait to see what comes out of their studies on the sustainability effort. Again, they're looking at other jurisdictions, and maybe we can move forward, further down the road.
So Holly, the thing though is that I'm thinking about what Mary said. I mean, there's sustainability, which of course we're interested in, but that's really different from our lane is preservation. We don't want to see significant contributing structures demolished. And I'm listening to what Mary had to say, which is there is not a clear process, despite what is outlined in building with Nantucket in mind. There's not a process that's actually followed that is successful, in her opinion. Mary, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think that's what you said, is that there really should be.
Yeah, I don't know that I would say that it isn't standardized the way that things are working right now. From, in my opinion, the level of, I don't know, but I would also say that in the conversations that I had with the HDC as I was going through the process of, considering this demolition delay bylaw, which for the record, I was going to pull had it been an in-person town meeting, and use that as an opportunity to pull it on the floor and explain why it was being pulled. Which was essentially, it was going to require an amendment of the special act, and use this as an opportunity to remind the HDC and remind the town meeting body that the HDC already has the power to do everything preservationists would like them to do now. I don't know if in your meeting with the HDC, is there a way to point that out, that the NHC is here to support the HDC in the decisions that they make when they, if they were to deny this demolition of a significant structure, that you would be there to support them. I think that would be helpful. Sorry, I also think just in conversations with them, I think they would be willing to work with the NHC on this topic. Now, again, this was more than a year ago, but they seem to understand their role. They function very well as an architectural review board. But sitting down and really getting into that historical significance is something that maybe a little outside the scope of some of the folks on the board as it's constituted now. And I think they would welcome that help from this commission.
Well, that would be good to hear. I mean, we have a lot of people here who do work really closely with the HCC. I mean, I think what we're talking about, just staying in the preservation lane, is that if the building is more than 50 years old, it would be assessed as to whether or not it is potentially preferably preserved. And that would determine, buildings are preferably preserved if they contribute to the period of significance for the landmark, and that they have historic integrity. Tom, yes?
And the streetscape.
Yeah, that they contribute to the context and the streetscape, and they have integrity. I mean, it sounds really loosey-goosey, but it's actually really well defined by the Park Service about what integrity is, what historic integrity is, and of course the dates and what we can learn about the building pretty quickly can tell us whether or not a building is contributing to our landmark. So I think and we would really want to do this hand in hand with the HCC, because I just don't think if they weren't supportive and they didn't like the idea, I actually don't think it would work. I think we'd create a huge amount of work for ourselves that like would lead to nothing because they would ignore us. So the process would be but we would create more work for ourselves. So the process would be if the building is more than 50 years old, and if I guess it would be Holly determines that it is potentially preferably preserved, then it would come to the NHC for a hearing. And the hearing would be to determine whether or not it's preferably preserved. Then we would make the recommendation to the HDC that the building is preferably preserved. And then they would decide whether or not they wanted to deny a demolition, or we would have to define demolition, but they would then be ultimately the authority that would, to Angus's question, put teeth in that. They could disagree with us, but of course, our determination would have weight in a court of law or at an appeal, because we're the historical commission, not the architectural review board. So that's kind of how I think it would potentially play out. And Holly, I see you're wanting to say something.
Thank you. I'm just curious, are you looking at chapter 40C of Mass General Law as your reference for that process? Because I just wanted to ask that, because again, that's why I keep on saying Nantucket is so unique. We have this already outlined within building with Nantucket in mind. I'm not dismissing the fact that there are issues and it would be nice to make it better. That's why I was referring to what we have already in the books in the general bylaw with demo delay on beefing that up to remove the burden on the HDC. I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah. So I would not want to remove the burden of determining whether or not a building can be demolished from the HDC. I think that would be, I mean, it rests with them, whether they want it or not. They're the ones that have to determine this. And I wouldn't want to create two systems. I just think that would be really confusing. But I do want to address Mary's observation, which is there's not a standardized process, and that the functions of an architectural review board are really different from the functions of a historical commission. And this is why, you know, historical commissions are comprised of the people that typically comprise them, and their duties, which include determining significance, both through surveys and through hearings for demo delay, is typically given to the historical commission. So the trick, you know, the secret sauce here, and then what's like Nantucket always has to be different, right, would be to figure out how to have this cooperative effort between the two commissions, where even though the determination about demolition has to rest with the HDC, the kind of the preservation study of it rests with the NHC, and that the HDC looks to the NHC to make the determination. And that would actually be codified in the demo delay bylaw, because that is, even though our demo delay bylaw is for reuse, this process of being preferably preserved typically lives in a demo delay process. Can I hear from the commissioners about whether or not this has any merit and if it's something that we might want to work on? Yes, Mickey.
I like what you said earlier about having, you know, I'm not sure what it involves, but having, I guess, just the time for the NHC or some other board, but probably the NHC, to review these demo applications before it gets even to the HSAB review. Because when we look at them, we don't have either the knowledge or the ability to say that this is technically the, you know, what should be happening, or should this building be preserved or not, because we don't really know that much about it. We don't have the time to do the research. So for us to have that information ahead of time at HSAB, then we could make a much stronger recommendation to HTC. So I like that concept.
Angus?
I would echo what Mickey's saying. A part of the HDC application requires that we get the history, the survey, all that information. Often that is not included, yet the application comes to us. And I think that this is an excellent topic to bring up with the HDC in one of our earliest meetings. May not be the first one, but but hopefully soon after, how can we support the HDC in preserving structures, historic structures?
Tom?
Yes, I've got to hard stop. I've got to go, but I agree with Angus and Mickey. Between their board and the Historic Structures Board and this board advising the HDC, I mean, you've got a lot of people looking at this, and I think that's significant. I mean, that should help them a lot. They're the ones that are certainly going to make the decision, but we have a lot of interested people here that you know are very involved in this, and I think you know, with all those people looking at it and helping the HDC, I mean, I think that well, I don't know. I think we've talked about it plenty, and I have to go. So whatever you guys decide, I will be in favor of. So I will see you all on the 15th of October.
Thank you, Tom.
Bye, Tom.
You know, one
Other comments?
one other comment regarding the HGC, what they tend to do sometimes when it's a demolition of a house with a new house proposed is they'll look at in parallel the two applications. They'll look at the new house and then they'll look at, you know, holding the demo aside. And to me, then what they start to do is they start comparing the two houses, the old versus the proposed. And then it becomes sort of a subjective thing of which would I rather see on the property, this nice new design or something that's a little funkier and old. And I think that taints their decision-making about it. So that's an HDC review policy, which we can't really get involved in, but I think it needs something that could be brought to their attention at some point.
You know, it's worth noting that if they wanted to give this decision to us, they could do that. We wouldn't need a bylaw. I mean, they can write their own. Are there existing operating policy? You know how like the NPDC has its own bylaws, which aren't published anywhere, but they're being reviewed right now. So I've seen them. I didn't know they existed. Does the HCC have bylaws? Other than building with Nantucket in mind?
We have the special act, building with Nantucket in mind.
Right, but the special act says that the HCC can establish its own policies and procedures and can delegate to others.
There's internal policies and procedures as far as, you know, applications and the like, but I mean, I'm not too sure what you're referring to exactly.
I just wonder if there's anything that exists, like any kind of document that says bylaws for the HDC that's anything other than building with Nantucket in mind and the special act. No.
No.
My issue is
Yes,
sort of procedural. I mean, when does this all get built into the process? And is that are we adding to the HDC's burden rather than helping them?
And if I may, that's my concern, Georgia. That's why I would think looking at this whole kind of sustainability issue, as well as, you know, the demo issue, it all works together. You've got the sustainability issue and preservation issue, and WPI students will be looking at it this fall. They just started. They're going to be coming back with the town to saying these are our findings. I really do think that would be beneficial for this overall issue from a preservation perspective, because again, I brought to the fact that I would like to be able to, yes, the HDC has the authority to say yay or nay on a demo, regardless of its age. But the main issue is whether or not a structure is contributing. It would be nice to be able to kind of say, okay, well, this structure right here, we know exactly its age, it's non-contributing, boom, this is the process, how we want a sustainability, how do we want to alleviate it from out of the landfill, how do we want to include it within our Housing Nantucket initiatives, affordable housing, all these different things that are all tied in together. From a historic perspective, both Angus and Mickey brought up the fact that yes, there are applications that come before the commissions that are, quite frankly, not providing the historic information. And I, on that note, I've been publicly mentioning it at HDC meetings that, hey, I have a pre-Revolutionary War typical Nantucket right here on this application, but you, whoever you are, have not provided this application, this information. I'm trying to get the point across because these staff members out here cannot be the end all be all for that process. It has to come from the agent architect to provide the historic information. So I say this to say, a lot of we're talking about processes and procedures. This is just unprecedented times. It's been for the last almost 2 years. A lot of stuff has been coming through. I would just like to this is a concern, and I would highly recommend this being a concern as the CLG, as the Joint Commission meeting. Maybe, like was just mentioned, maybe not this meeting coming up, but a subsequent meeting nonetheless. Because when this whole concept of revising, looking at demolition and how it's been handled, Mary did bring it up, and I believe that the HDC would be in favor of having this partnership on demolition. Now, again, you need to also look at the fact that Nantucket's HDC was created prior to federal law, state law on preservation in general. So there's a lot of authority that's put on the special act and the HDC. Now, how can this commission, through mechanisms of bylaw changes, if that's needed, can benefit? And I do think in order to move forward with any type of proposed bylaw, we would need to have some more information. That would be my recommendation.
Yeah, well, we're not making any decisions about moving forward with bylaws at this point. So, but I agree, Holly. I mean, it sounds like it's something we need to talk to the HCC about, and that's why we're having this joint meeting. So I'm hearing people say that this is a problem. There's a problem because stuff is getting demolished that shouldn't be, in personal people's opinion, that there's not a clear process defined that's standardized, that's followed in a standard way, and that, they're just different skill sets. But everyone seems to agree that it's a collective issue, and rather than say, all right, let's get a citizens warrant in before the deadline of November 15th, when our meeting is going to be November 12th, we should just take it up at the meeting and, see if maybe we can practically work something out. Is there support for that idea that Holly recommended? Or do you want to just get a citizens warrant in and have something to review October 15th? What is the pleasure, Commission?
I mean, I think I like I don't know when the report is coming in from the students. Holly, when is their deadline?
Well, this is the fall semester. They just started. So
oh, okay. So it would be December or something, or
December.
January.
Yeah.
Correct. December. Yeah. But again, we've all acknowledged that it's of concern. There are ways to make it better, I think, from a preservation perspective in general. Obviously, having more information behind you, moving forward in the right direction as a joint CLG. This is a CLG concern, in my opinion, not one commission over the other. It needs to be collaborative, and that's why another reason why I would want to wait and have that discussion together.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree.
I also agree.
I think also is, what we're trying to do is not take over HDC's job. We're trying to help them. We're trying to help them because we recognize how busy they are. So if there's a way to do that and they acknowledge that way, that would be great. So
that, and it ties on what a planning, basically you're a historic preservation commission, you're a planning preservation planning. That's the whole aspect of what you all do. That is completely different from what a historic district commission does from an architectural review perspective, and acknowledging the fact of our uniqueness of being prior to the federal law, state law is very important in how the two commissions can work together, and why I've been an advocate for the CLG in the beginning.
Right.
Okay, we're past the 12 o'clock deadline. The one thing that is related to ATM is just budgets. I mean, Holly, will we continue to have support for surveys in the budget? Do you know anything about the budget being put together?
For next year's budget, so for instance, to basically continue what we did for this past year, no, I have not had that conversation, but I will. Is
Okay.
that what that intention was in the agenda?
Oh, the agenda says budget for NHC, HCC staffing and surveys. So yes, definitely we have a plan to continue surveys. We're creating a plan that will have like a work plan to survey the whole island, and it's going to take additional resources. Now, of course, we're going to get a rebate, but we have to continue. We want to, continue to march through updating these surveys. So we'd like to have the support, financial support from the town again to do that. Staffing. I wanted to have a discussion about, I just have the feeling, Holly, that there's the preservation function needs more support from staff. And it's just, I look at everything you're doing and concerned that, well, the question is, do we want to express a need? Do we believe that the town should have more staff capacity for the CLG, supporting both commissions, the activities of both commissions? Because as we're a board here, we're a commission, and we advocate for these things. So that's why that was on that. It's a conversation we probably won't have time for right now, but I can certainly take the temperature of the commissioners and hear from Holly on that topic.
It's kind of putting me on the spot.
You don't have to comment, Holly. I mean, the only way I can talk about these things with my commissioners is, with our commission, is to put it on the agenda. So if you don't want to comment, you don't have to, but anyone want to comment?
What's your goal in this, Hillary?
Well, there's a staffing survey that's been done. And there's also been a review of Plus, which clearly notes that, the commissioners on the HCC are flat out. It's a volunteer position. It's not sustainable. And Holly is our preservation planner, and my impression is that she's spending a lot of time in meetings supporting, discussions about houses that have nothing to do with historic structures. And is there do we want to do more work on this? Do we want to focus the attention of the town on this? Is it of concern to our commission?
I don't think you're
Holly?
saying anything, I don't think you're saying anything that people don't know or haven't said. So why our goal is to what? Increase funding for preservation planning?
If we think that we need more staff in this function, we have to request it of the town. So we would make a request, and we'd have to have supporting evidence for that. Holly, you had your hand up.
Yes, I would just caution in general with requesting additional staff anywhere in town when we have basically a staff shortage in general. There are positions, well-known positions in this town that are vacant. We all understand that we can't get a transportation planner. They're looking for a DPW head. There are multiple different job descriptions out there that the town needs to function, that they can't get for one reason or another. And I think that if there is another push to add additional staff, that's probably not I wouldn't want to be advocating for additional staff in the atmosphere that this island is in right now. And quite frankly, from the listservs that I'm on for everything from preservation and planning to both, There are other municipalities within the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that are looking. Every day I see something. Either it's a preservation planner, a transportation planner, a regular planner, DPW head. I mean, it's everywhere. It's not just Nantucket. And I don't think there wouldn't be room for additional staff. But again, I would hate to put another burden on town admin and the town in general to add more staff. Everybody is working as hard as they can.
Thank you, Holly. Other comments? Angus, I mean, I know staffing support for the HCC has been a concern of yours as a member of an advisory committee. Is there anything for this commission to do about that?
The same concerns apply. I feel like whenever we talk about engaging with the HDC, it's a huge problem because they're overloaded. And I think they're overloaded because of the lack of review before they get applications. They spend a lot of time reviewing things that just shouldn't be applications. But I think, Holly's right. There are vital roles that are needing to be filled with the town, and it seems like the capacity for the town to deal with anything is minimal.
And there's also an element of just making recommendations in our capacity as part of the government for, maybe working smarter about some things. And I don't mean to say, to imply that people are working dumb. I don't think they are. I just don't think that we've employed, we have this review function that puts, maybe this, I guess the question is this a discussion for a topic for our discussion with the chair? Should buildings that, it's new construction, it's utilitarian, it's not in a sensitive area, should that get a different type? Should that have a different type of design review? Yes, Holly.
And all of that would require, well, a lot of it would require any changes that you would take away and put more onto staff, regardless of how many staff we have, requires a change to the special act. There's a lot of different things that the special act holds. Again, we don't follow the typical 40C Massachusetts general law when it comes to HDC. So
Holly, I actually disagree with you. I think that it would require approval from the HDC, but the level of scrutiny and the level of time that the commission, that it's up to them how they satisfy their review. So, yeah, I don't think it would require a change to the special act to achieve some of the things that I think we could suggest improvements that would not require changes to the special act. But I mean, we're not talking about anything specific here, so it's a little bit like arbitrary to even have the conversation. The question is, should we be working and making recommendations about staffing to really do a better job, keep ourselves sane, achieve more in the preservation lane that we operate in?
Hillary, this is David. Is this something that we could rope into our discussion and part of our update with the select board?
I think that's a really good advice. I mean, we could ask them, we could tell them that it's something, that we're thinking about and ask them.
Because,
for their
staffing is certainly outside the bounds of what we do as the local historical commission. So I don't want to overstep in that regard, but I certainly understand the goals that we're trying to achieve and make things a little bit more expedient, in our work with the HDC. So I just wonder if the select board might have some additional ideas and might be able to point us in the right direction. As far as maybe to alleviate some of the pressure that's on everyone that's short-staffed.
Yeah. Okay. Kadeem, did you want to say something?
Nope, I
Oh,
did not,
okay,
sorry.
you just turn your camera on.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I was done with what I was doing, so I was
Okay. All right. Well, folks, it is a 1:15 now, so I think we've got our marching orders to continue to work on the small pools. And that's a topic for the 15th, and that the idea of preferably preserve some process tied to the demo delay bylaw to have a parallel process or an enhanced process for determining contributing status would be something that we would take on jointly in our discussion with the HDC for November 12th. I might provide some more shape for that discussion that we could discuss, just so we're prepared in October. I think that's our meeting. Anything else?
Yeah, Hillary, one thing for the agenda for next month. I was contacted by some homeowners in Sconset. They own property on 32 New Street and 33 West Sankaty. And what they're trying to do is restore the tin roof that was existing, I think, in the 40s on their cottage. They've had some trouble with the HDC, and they reached out to me, knowing my role on this commission. And I was wondering if that was something that we could put on the agenda. I can contact you outside of this.
Yeah, so Angus and Holly and I have an agenda planning meeting, and we're certainly happy to hear any suggestions for agenda topics.
I definitely.
So,
sorry, go ahead.
So maybe you could either brief Holly or write it up and let Holly know, and then we can talk about it about if it's appropriate for an agenda.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Okay, so I will accept the oh, Holly, did you want to say something? No. Okay, so is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
I'll second.
Okay. Everyone, have a great lunch. Thanks so much.